Well, I think there's I mean, you asked this question, Armin, why don't companies do this? I think there's a couple reasons they don't do it. And that's actually what sparked my interest in this. Number one, most organizations do this when they first start. When it's a solo entrepreneur starting the business, maybe one or two people, they really care about their clients. They really care about their employees. Why? Because they only have one or two. It's easy. The problem is, as we start to scale, things start to fall through the cracks. We don't have that same personal and emotional connection. We don't have that same commitment. We get to the point with our clients where we may have grown our team that we don't even know every client that we're serving. As we think about our employees or our team members, we grow to a size where we weren't involved in the hiring of everybody on the team. We don't even know kind of what their backgrounds or their roles are. And so I think part of the reason why people don't put themselves in the shoes of others is because they grow so fast, the organization gets so big, the disconnect increases, and it can be challenging. It can be challenging to step out of our own worldview and try to understand another person's perspective. I think empathy is a hugely important and powerful tool, but it's something that most of us don't spend a lot of time practicing.
And that's so interesting because you said, well, you can't create a great customer experience without a great employee experience, which makes a lot of sense, especially when we talk, when you just mentioned the word scaling, where it really goes like client relationships go beyond the founder and so on and so forth. So, what's really kind of the link there? Because on the one hand, you could say, well, can we systematize it? Right. So it might not be, the customer experience might be not fully attached to the employee. On the other hand, that's probably not the case, especially if you think about B2B high ticket services. So could you elaborate a little bit on this? So how do you think about it?
Well, I think of all interactions not as B2B or B2C or B2G, but rather H to H. It's humans to humans. And so I think you can systematize some of these operations. I think you can automate some of them, but you can't let your systemization and your automation detract from your humanity. You still need to be finding ways to make the interactions personal and emotional. Now, what I think is interesting about those two words, Armin, is personal means it's relevant to me. Emotional means I have an emotional reaction to it. Now, if you were to ask me about what it's like to grow up in a large family, I grew up in a family of 7. My answer is both personal and emotional. But if you were asked me, well, what's it like to be an only child? Well, I don't have any personal connection to it, but I have some emotional thoughts about it that are influenced by growing up in a big family. So the secret, I think, is when we can have conversations with the people we interact with, whether those are our customers or our employees, that are both personal and emotional. And that's the opportunity, I think, for us to be looking for in our organizations is where is the opportunity for a personal touch point? Where is the opportunity for an emotional touch point? And if we can combine the personal and emotional touch point, that leads to good things.
And that makes a lot of sense. And in your new book, you mentioned a couple of statistics why this is true. So, like, why should we really care? So, the logic that you just mentioned makes total sense. So, is there any kind of, evidence, hard evidence, since like some, that would point to, wow, you really need to pay attention to this?
Well, I think the hard evidence can most easily be found in the volume of employee turnover and the financial impact of employee turnover. There's a number of pieces of data and evidence we can look to, but let's just look at those two for purposes of our conversation here.
Sure.
Number one, 40% of newly hired employees, 40%, 40, will not be with the organization at their 1-year anniversary. 40% of new hires quit before the 1-year anniversary.
That's US data, right?
That's global.
It's global. Okay.
Global data. 40%. Okay. So this is a huge number of people that are starting working somewhere and quitting. Now, let's give you some US data on the financials. The cost of that quitting in the United States alone is $700 billion annually. $700 billion annually, the cost of employee turnover. Now, what we see is more and more employees in today's market are quitting and thinking about leaving. Let's look at the thinking about leaving. 65% of Americans currently employed are thinking about quitting and going to a different job. Some people say, well, it's tough in America. Yeah. Well, it's in the high 50s in Japan. It's in the 60s in most countries in Europe, right? I think it's last data I saw was mid 50s in Australia. The numbers are high globally in terms of employees thinking there might be a better opportunity somewhere else. And part of it's very easy to quit a company. It's very hard to quit a friendship. And if you
Mm.
are friends with your coworkers, if you are friends with your boss, if you are connected in a personal and emotional way, that's what I mean by being friends, right? You have a personal and emotional connection. It's a lot harder to quit.